Great morning. I hope you are wide awake and raring to hear what the Lord has to say to us today. But before we jump into our lesson, we are always blessed to have someone come and sing for us. And so today is no exception. So let's lift up our special singer in prayer as they come to sing what God put upon their heart to minister to us as we enter into this time of worship. And by the looks of things, it looks like most of you got your clock set correctly. Last night, I'll tell you briefly before they come to sing, last night I was aggravating Judy. I went through the house and set up the clocks already, and we was getting ready to go to bed, and she said, don't forget to do the clocks. I said, okay, and so I started doing them again. I said, do we spring forward or fall back? She said, well, you gain an hour. I said, well, if you gain an hour, that's positive. You go forward, right? So I started setting the clocks forward. She said, no, you go back. I said, well, that's losing. You lose an hour. And so for 45 minutes, we discuss whether you gain, whether you lose, whether you fall forward, fall backward, spring forward, and I had forgot I'd already set the clocks, so I set them again. And then I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning thinking, wait a minute, what time is it? And so I confused myself trying to confuse her. So the good thing is, you're here, and I really believe that in the next few minutes there'll be more coming in, so let's lift them up in prayer. And also, if you don't have a handout, if you could just lift your hand. John's coming around with the handouts, so we want to make sure everybody gets some over in the back corner. All righty, so let's dive into worship. Let's experience God today in a new, fresh way. Let's start by having our special singer come to sing for us. I know you're going to be blessed, so let's lift them up in prayer.
When life's winds begin to blow, seems there's nowhere left to go. I have a place where I find refuge from the storm. My mind goes back to these words my dear old mama taught to me. She'd say, child, find consolation on your knees. Whatever brings you to your knees is good for you. It might be hard to see right now, but Jesus knows what's best for you. So in prayer, you'll find the answer to the problems you can't solve, if you will place them in the mighty hand of God. If there's a need in your life, in this old world of toil and strife, just talk to the Master like your father, when as a child he'd hear your plea. You'll find an ear that's always open, and a power beyond degree, and you'll find faith and consolation on your knees. Whatever brings you to your knees is good for you. It might be hard to see right now, but Jesus knows what's best for you. So in prayer, you'll find the answer to the problems you can't solve, if you will place them in the mighty hands of God. So in prayer, you'll find the answer to the problems you can't solve. If you will place them in the mighty hand of God.
Could you hold on one second? I hate to ask this, but I just know, based upon what we're going to study today, I think this song actually fits better than most of the things that we've ever studied before. How hard would it be for you just to sing that chorus one more time for us? Just the chorus. And listen to the words. Now, I'm saying this on behalf of the class. I'm saying this as the teacher knowing the lesson. But God is saying, listen because of your life. Listen because of what's going on in your circumstances. Where are you running to? What are you calling out for? Where are you looking to solve your problems? Well, the answer's in this song. Listen.
Whatever brings you to your knees is good for you. It might be hard to see right now, but Jesus knows what's best for you. So in prayer, you'll find the answer to the problems you can't solve. If you will place them in the mighty hand of God.
Thank you, ladies. I hope you heard that. Because in this lesson and in our own lives, it's quite easy to come up against something that seems insurmountable. It's quite possible that we're going to come up against a phone call, a doctor's report, a letter in the mail, a notice at work, or a set of circumstances that could be beyond our control. And it seems impossible. It seems there's no way out. But yet God knows the plan He has. And He knows He's already got it resolved, and He knows the path through. We just need to place it into the mighty hands of God. Whatever brings us to our knees is good for us. Amen? May not feel that way. It may hurt right now. It may sting. It may seem alone. But God knows what's best. And here we have, in this moment, the nation of Israel in chapter 13 had just sent out all these spies, these 12 men, one of each tribe. They each went out into this land with a specific set of tasks, with a specific set of instructions. Go to the north and go to the south and go to the east and the west and go down by the river, go over the mountains. Look at the gates, look at the armory, look at the cities, look at the prosperitiness, the plentiness, look at the food. And in fact, bring samples back. And they did. These were spies, men who were supposed to go in undercover, not be seen, not be detected, not raise any red flag, not raise a ruckus, because the people that were there, they didn't want them to attack them. So if they sent these spies in and they'd come in with fanfare and blowing trumpets, who knows what they're going to stir up. And then all of a sudden these big giants are going to come across the hill and wipe them out while they're waiting. So they sent them in with the instructions and anticipation and mission of just going in undercover. But yet the Bible tells us that they went in and they picked up grapes and pomegranates and branches of fruit so big that 2 men had to carry them on staves between each other, kind of like they would the Ark of the Covenant. It took 4 men to carry it, so big and so heavy. And spies, you go in kind of in a recon mode. And to show you how God is working in this lesson today, just a few moments ago, someone was telling me about a trip that they took recently, standing at a gas station, seeing a man with a veteran's hat on and striking up a conversation just seemingly out of the blue. And the story is that this guy was a member of a 5-man recon team, and how close-knit they were, and how recon teams, when you go in, you're so close and so bonded that you actually can think and feel for each other to know how to accomplish the mission. And the guy's older guy, and the question was, would you do it again? He said, if they called me now, I'd go back with them. So many of you in the military, you know that when you're in these recon missions and when you're out in the middle of the desert, or you're in the middle of a battle, or you're in a war, there's a bond, there's a cohesiveness and a unity about the men and women that are fighting, so that you know you've got each other's back. Here were 12 spies sent out on a mission, a recon team, who should all be together, who should all share the same mission and goal, and that is to bring back the report to Moses and to Aaron, so that, hey, let's go. God said there's land flowing with milk and honey. And when they came back, they actually said, yes, what the Lord said is true. There is milk and honey over there. But then we got to that passage in chapter 13 where they said, yes, what the Lord promised is true. We saw it. The grapes are plenteous, the pomegranates are big, the land is milk and honey, it's plenteous, it's going to be great, the fertile lands, our cattle is going to graze, everything is going to be awesome. Nevertheless, remember we talked about that last week. How many of you know those people? Well, the Lord healed my mom, but nevertheless. Well, the Lord solved my job situation, but nevertheless. They're never happy. They're never content. They're never satisfied or satiated with anything, even the things that God can give them. You can get a brand new home, brand new house, and all of a sudden you're complaining about it costs a lot to heat this place. You know what I mean? You can be talking about this building, this church. God has given us this great, magnificent opportunity, placed us in a position in this community, but yet you could be stressed out over what it takes to operate it daily. You see what I'm saying? There are people, and in this group, in this cohesive recon team, in this 12 men who were supposed to go out and come back with such good news, yes, what the Lord said is true, let's go. They came back with such negative reports, and even such a divisive report, that even the people were arguing and complaining. And you have in your notes the last verse of chapter 13, and it says, chapter 13 and verse 33, because this is how we ended. They were telling the reports. Some were saying, hey, yeah, it's good, but nevertheless, there's big people over there. Yes, nevertheless, there's milk and honey, but there's walls of fortified cities. Yeah, there's good pomegranates and grapes and blessings and cattle, but it's a long way. Then all of a sudden we ended with what? And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were, notice this, in our own sight as grasshoppers. And so we were in their sight. In other words, man, when we went over there, there were some big dudes. And I'm telling you, I was just a little bitty fella. I had no power. I had no might. I had no ability. There's nothing that I can do to hurt them. I'm just as much as a grasshopper in their sight. And that's how they felt about themselves. Now, wait a minute. I thought these were the people who God just brought out of Egypt, and standing on the bank of the Red Sea, saw the mighty hand of God take a river, the Red Sea, and wash up and kill all of the Egyptians. I thought these were the men who God said, you're going to go to battle with the Amalekites. And as long as Moses is on the mountain, and as long as his arms lifted, you're going to prevail and you're going to win. And they just came through that battle. I thought these were the people who, when they came into the desert, when they came into this place, they saw God in his raw form, in the power of God up on the mountain, so much that when Moses went up on the mountain and he stood with God and he talked with God, and God said, I'm going to let my glory pass by you, but you can't see me. You can only see just a little bit of me, so I'm going to hide you in the cleft of the rock. And when Moses came down, the Bible said he glowed with such radiant glow to know that he was just slightly, just for a millisecond, in the finest minute detail in the presence of this powerful God that they serve. But yet they say, we're weak. We're nothing. Well, the reason they saw themselves as weak and nothing is just what they sang about. When they're trying to do it in their own eyes and under their own power and under their own strength and nowhere. Let's read verses 1 through 3 real quick. Chapter 14. Numbers chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. Let's read it real quick. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried. Now watch what the people are doing. And think about the song that you just heard. When problems come your way, when you go to your knees and you place your troubles in the arms of a mighty God, He knows what's best and He's going to take care of it. Let's ask ourselves as we're watching this unfold, what did they do? They just got the report. I don't know, Moses. I don't know, Aaron. I just don't think we're going to be able to take those guys. There's some pretty big dudes over there. There's some pretty big fortified cities. I mean, yeah, I get it, but there's no way we're going to make it. Watch what happens in verse 1 and through 3. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and prayed? No. They sought God and they went to the tabernacle and had worship? No. The Bible says they cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And the whole congregation said unto them, would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God that we had died in the wilderness? And therefore hath the Lord brought us unto this land to fall by the sword? Now watch what happens. This almost sounds like what's happening on the TV today, right? On the news, you hear something bad happens. You hear something that's not really the whole story, and people want to exaggerate and add it and make it more dramatic than really what it is. Watch what they say, the next word in verse 3. And wherefore hath the Lord brought us unto this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be prey? In other words, Moses, I don't want to go die. I don't want to go fight these people. I don't want my wife to be captive. I don't want my children to be taken captive. I don't want my ancestries and my heritage. I don't want my family to be slaves. I don't want them to be killed. I wish they were already dead back in the wilderness. It makes no sense. I wish I was back in Egypt where my wife was being raped by the Egyptians and killed and enslaved, but I don't want her raped out here. What are you talking about? I wish she was killed back in Egypt. I don't want her to die out here. You see how the conversation's unfolding? It's almost as if they're so discombobulated in their brain and so disconnected with walking and trusting God that they're making no sense. I would rather my wife have died of starvation in the wilderness than have her be killed by an enemy. She's dead either way. What are you saying? I wish my wife had lived a meaningless existence of brutal lashing, whipping on her back, and die of starvation in the brick pit rather than her die out here by this battle. She's dead either way. You have nothing to claim to. It's an emotional response to a lack of faith in God. And how many people do you know in your life that when something happens, instead of saying, well, that's tough, but I really feel God's going to help us here, they automatically start over-dramatizing, over-exaggerating, exacerbating the situation, and it just becomes a conversation that after about 20 minutes, you're like, what are we even talking about? Why did it get here? How do we chase all these little rabbits in this conversation? All we started with was a report that says, do we trust God or not? That's the end of the conversation. God said it's milk and honey. It's there. God said we're going to win. He's proven it. Do we trust Him? The answer is very simple. When you get into a conversation with someone And they try to chase all these little rabbits and all these little sub-conversations, and they deflect all of the things. They bring up stuff like this. All of a sudden, the wives, I wish she was dead back there instead of dead here. I wish my children were dead back there instead of being dead here. What they're trying to do is avoid facing the truth. They want to deflect the conversation to something else. They want to make it more dramatic than it has to be. They want to overanalyze it more than it has to be. It's a simple question. Do we trust God? But the song said we should pray. The song said we should give it to God and trust Him. Nowhere in these 3 verses do we find them doing that. All we find is them arguing, murmuring, and complaining. Now, if I was to call a spiritual timeout for a second, I don't know about you, I put it in your notes. If I was Moses, right about now, I'd almost be thinking, I wish you were dead too. Because that's all you've done is complained. That's all you've done is griped. God gave you food, you griped it ain't good enough. God gave you freedom, you griped it ain't good enough. God gave you water, you griped it ain't good enough. God gave you a home, it ain't good enough. God's leading you, showing you His power, giving you opportunity, telling you the promises, telling you what's going to happen. He's validating in your very sight the historical covenant that was made with your forefathers, and it ain't good enough. No show of hands. How many of you ever met anybody like that? You take them out to eat and you're buying their dinner, and it ain't good enough. You know what I'm saying? You buy them a Christmas present, and it ain't good enough. You know what I'm saying? You give your kid a car when they're 16, and it ain't good enough, right? You know what I'm talking about? Many of you been there? You know what I'm saying? No matter what you do for people, and for some people, it's never good enough. Here you have the nation of Israel saying, God's promises ain't enough. God's evidence of power ain't enough. God's miracles that He's performed ain't enough. God's presence in our lives right here in front of us ain't enough. And Moses is listening to all of this. And if I was him, I wonder what I would think. I'd be like, I'm tired of them. Lord, whatever you want to do. But let's watch what happens. Let's read verses 4 through 9. Watch what happens. And they said one to another, Numbers chapter 14, verses 4, let us make a captain and let us return to Egypt. Now this is a direct slap in the face of Moses. Moses, I know God pointed you, because remember now, just a few moments ago, Miriam and Joshua came in to complain. Remember that? Miriam complaining about Moses' wife. Moses' wife. And God said, Moses is my man. I speak to him differently than I speak to prophets. What I say, he says. Whatever he says is just as if it's coming out of my mouth. And God asked this question, if I am speaking directly to Moses and I'm talking right out of his mouth, why are you not afraid? Right? And they saw the punishment of her challenging God. They saw her get leprosy and delay the whole nation's moving because she challenged God's leader. And now the whole nation is saying, we're not only going to challenge him, we're going to get a private committee and we're going to vote another leader just because we don't like that one. Let us make a captain ourselves. Let us choose our leader instead of God choosing him. Maybe this leader will take us in our direction. Maybe this leader will take us back into slavery. Maybe this leader will take us back into bondage. Maybe this leader will take us back to what we know. There are times when God has something planned for us, and it takes us out of our comfort zone. It takes us out of what we know, and sometimes maybe what we like, and what breaks up our routine. Now, some of you may not know this about me, but I'm a pretty routine guy. I like my routines. I like my Sunday naps. You can invite me over to eat and I'll come. But come 1:15, I might be asleep. I don't care if you're talking or not. It's just my routine. I like my routine. I'm going to sleep. There's times where Judy and I will be driving and we'll be late getting home and we'll get about 4 or 5 red lights from the house, and she literally nudges me to keep me awake because my routine is I go sleep and I'm going. I've been at Judy's mom and dad's house and we're sitting there and there's 15 people talking. I just go over. I'm gone. I like certain shows. I like certain times. When Todd gives the weather, I'm gone. I'm out. Judy's like, well, I'm not sleepy. Sweetheart, you can stay. It's Todd's going to give the weather. I'm going to bed. I don't care if it's Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday. When Todd gives the weather, it's 10:08. I'm going to bed. I get up at 7 whether the alarm clock goes off or not. I'm so routine. I like my routine. I like my daily. I go to work. I'm so routine. When I make my coffee and my oatmeal, if someone has moved the cups backwards and the styrofoam cups are in the back and the plastic cups are in the front, I will literally pour coffee in my oatmeal because I don't look. I'm in a routine. What's supposed to be there is supposed to be there. So I get it. But there are times when what God wants to do for you is to get you out of that routine, because He knows what's best. He knows what He needs to do to you to get you to the place where He wants you to serve Him. They were willing to go back to Egypt because it's what they know. It's their routine. Was it brutal? Yes. Was it harsh? Yes. But they didn't care. All they knew was what was ahead of them was unfamiliar. What that was ahead of them seemed bigger, seemed scarier, seemed more worse than going back to the harshness of Egypt. And they were willing to take that chance. So watch what happens here. We're in verse 5. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes. So the two spies that were telling the good report, the true report, they rent their clothes in a desperation, in an outward appearance of frustration and anxiety. And it's a way of like, why don't you just understand what we're saying? Why don't you just get it? So they would rend their clothes. Okay, so now here we are in verse 7. And they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to search it is exceeding good land. Now watch what happens. If the Lord delights in us, then He will bring us into this land, and will give it us, a land which floweth with milk and honey. Only rebel not ye against the Lord, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear them not. And in verse 10, but all the congregation bade stone them with stones, and the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. And the Lord said unto Moses, how long will these people provoke me? And how long will it be ere they believe me for all the signs which I have showed among them? Now watch verse 12, because this is the second time now, the second time that the people have complained, they've griped, they've moaned, they've groaned, and the Lord said, how long are you going to test me? How long are you going to try me? How about this, Moses? How about I smite them all and just start with you again? This is the second time God's asked Moses, how about we do that? You're following me faithful. You're listening to me. I'm speaking to you directly, and you're regurgitating to the people exactly what I say. You're willing to follow me. You're willing to be faithful. you're willing to do what I ask, how about we just wipe them all out and start again? Now, personally, I like you guys, but if you complained as much as they complained, and Pastor Justin come up and said, how about we do this? How about we take you and Judy and we go start another Sunday school class? I'd be gone. That's just me. I would. I like you. But if you complained the way they complained, if you griped the way they complained and griped, if you was threatening to throw stones every time I walk in the building, I'd be like, well, they don't want me. God, I know you do. And Lord, if you say I'm supposed to do this, let's do it. Let's do it. Because as a leader, you think, my job is to follow God and to be a spokesperson, but to do good. A leader that hinders, a leader that hurts, a leader that creates dissension, a leader that creates animosity and chaos is not doing any good, right? We all know that. I mean, all you got to do is look at the modern elections today, and that's what everybody's talking about, right? Anybody who's in leadership position who creates dissension, animosity, and chaos, everybody says shouldn't be in leadership, right? I mean, it's not hard to figure out. A leader should be the person who unites, who guides. A leader should be the person who unifies. So if a leader's not doing his job, then he should go lead somewhere else. I mean, it's common sense. So if I was in Moses' spot, I would say, high five, this was your idea. You said, let's go start another, let's go. Lord, if it's your will, if this is what you're saying, I mean, the people have stones in their hands right now, Lord. They're ready to kill me. I'm out of here. But what does he do? Miriam creates ruckus against him. What does he do? He prays for her. He petitions the God who's listening to him. He's saying, Lord, you just said me and you are on good terms. I'm listening to you. I hope you're listening to me because I got something to say. And listen to what he says in verse 13. And Moses said unto the Lord, then the Egyptians shall hear it, for thou broughtest up this people in thy might from among them. And they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land, for they have heard that thou, Lord, art among this people, that thou, Lord, art seen face to face, and that thy cloud standeth over them, and that thou goest before them by the daytime in a pillar of cloud and in a pillar of fire by night. Now if thou shalt kill all these people as one man, then the nations which have heard the fame of thee will speak, saying, in other words, those that have heard about you, this is what they're going to say, Lord, because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land which he sware unto them, therefore he hath slain them in the wilderness. And now I beseech thee, Lord, I pray for you, let thy power of my Lord be great, according as thou hast spoken, saying. Now, verse 18, if you highlight anything in your Bible, if you underline, circle, draw notes, doodle, squiggly faces, and in your notes you'll see there's not a lot after this. Here's why, because I want to talk about verse 18 for a while. Verse 18 in the book of Numbers chapter 14 is one of the most profound doctrinal issues in the modern 21st century. Moses is saying, Lord, you have every right to smite these people. They're a stiff-necked people. They're not listening. I get it. But if you do, the rest of the world is going to say about you, you couldn't fulfill your own promise. You were in the middle of them. You talked to them. You helped them. And if you're so good and so great, then why won't your own people follow you? If you're so good and so great, then why couldn't you accomplish this simple little task? Because if you're greater than everybody, and we're just the creator, we're the creature, you're the creator, shouldn't the creature listen? I mean, if you're a pillar of fire, shouldn't we listen? If you're this massive pillar of cloud, shouldn't we obey? If you've done great and mighty works and miracles, shouldn't we listen? Lord, he says this, let your power be great through what? Read verse 18. Let your power be great because the Lord is what? Long-suffering and of great mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression. But watch this. And by no means clearing the guilty. He says, Lord, with power comes great responsibility. You have the power to wipe them out as one man. What that basically says is the Lord can speak and all 2.16 million will be dead. Not a slow death, not through attrition, not through old age or some plague or some disease or some overcoming of a battle by these giants, the son of Anak. Just as one person, they all fall dead. Right? They all fall dead. But instead of bringing glory to yourself, instead of bringing honor to your name, the rest of the world's going to talk about you and say, see, he wasn't that great to begin with. Even though he was in the middle of his people, they didn't listen to him. You remember when they were back in Egypt, when the plague started coming, one of the things that was said was, where is your God? God Osiris, the God of sun, right? He's far off. And Egypt would say, even our far off gods are better than the one that was in the midst of these people. If he was so great, why didn't they follow him? If he was so good, why didn't they obey him? If the gift that he was going to give them was so awesome through his promise, why did they not want to go? So let's talk about this for a minute. Because this world thinks that if you sin and you have a man who molests children, let's just call it what it is. You have a man who molests young children. You have a hurricane comes through and wipes out cities. You have earthquakes and volcanoes. You have random shooters walking into high schools. You have people murdering their elderly parents, right? Turn on the news. You have gangs on the one side of the town or the other side of the town doing drive-by shootings, innocent people being killed. People walking into businesses and threatening to blow stuff up, right? Well, if our God is so good, why does that happen? If our God is so great, why does that happen? If our God is a God of peace and love, why does that happen? Why do we have broken homes? If a man and a woman are Christian and they're living together and they're married and they're in that home and they both go to church and their God is so good, why do they beat their kids when they go home? That's what the world is asking, right? You know what I'm saying. It's everywhere. Because if our God was so good and everything was peachy keen because he's so great, then why isn't this place packed with millions of people? Because they don't believe it. And Moses says in verse 17 and 18 that it is God's raw power that he does not wipe us out. It is God's power to restrain himself from wiping us out every time we lie. For the wages of sin is what? Death. Have you ever sinned? Have you ever lied? Anybody? Anybody ever lied? Raise your hand. Anybody ever stolen anything? Well, okay, you just told me you're a liar, so raise up your hand. Right? I know you've stolen something. You've taken. How many of you ever took a grape at the grocery store that you didn't pay for? Anybody? Right? You stole. It's not the value of what you stole. If I reach in your wallet and I take a business card of a contact or I take a $100 bill, neither one was mine. Neither one, they both have different values, but I still what? Stole it. So what do you call somebody who steals? See, y'all can't even say the word. What do you call somebody who steals? A thief. What do you call somebody who tells a lie? A liar, right? How many lies do you have to tell to be one? 1,000,000? No, one. One lie and you are a liar. And if the wages of sin is death, why are we still sitting here? What is it about our God, if he's so good, that homes are broken, marriages are falling apart, children are abused, women are abused, people lie, cheat, and steal in business deals, sign a contract, 22 pages of loopholes, right? I mean, you can't even rent an apartment these days without having all these possibility of loopholes of this. I mean, why? Well, that's what the world is asking. And what they're asking is nothing new than what the Egyptians would be saying if God just wiped them out. Moses is saying, God, it is just your power that you don't wipe them out. It is your power to restrain yourself through long suffering. You give them mercy. You give them forgiveness. But it says, not withholding the punishment of the iniquity. No, you're going to punish them. But if you wipe them out, the world will say, if you're so good, why did they not want to go in? In today's world, the number one problem that we have, now hold on, because remember a minute ago I said if y'all start complaining too much, I'd find a new class, right? Remember a minute ago? I said that for a reason. The number one problem in this world is in this room. It's us. I come to church, I put on my tie, I read my Bible, I pray, I try to love my wife, I try to respect her, I try to raise my kids in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, I try to be humble, I try to have respect for you guys and the people driving down the road, I try to go to work, I try to do the right thing, but there are times where things come out of my mouth, right? Thoughts go through my head. Intentions build up in my heart. You know what I'm talking about? Things go on. And the rest of the world says, if you're a Christian, why'd you do that? Because I thought being Christian, I thought your God is so great and so loving, everybody's fine. Why is it that when you come to church, you hear just as much frustration and bickering and murmuring and backbiting as you do out in the world? Why? I thought if everything was so great with our God, if he's so loving and so awesome and we've dedicated our lives to serving him, why do we not want to come? Why is it when he says, come unto me, nobody wants to be here? Why is it that pastors Sunday after Sunday, teachers week after week, men and women in leadership positions all around the church go to the Southern Baptist Convention once a year, and they have seminars to teach pastors how to motivate y'all to want to be here? Why does a pastor have to go to a class to learn how to motivate people to want to be in the place that is of the person that they said was so good they're willing to dedicate their lives to? It's an oxymoron. We say one thing, but we live another way. And the world is looking in verse 17 and 18 saying, we're just like Egypt. All we're asking is if he's so great, why are y'all struggling with him? If he's so good to you, why do you not want to be in his presence? If he's so amazing and so loving, why don't you talk to him? If giving to his cause is furthering the word and the kingdom of God and the gospel, because that is going to heal bodies, heal minds, change lives, save souls, and fix marriages, fix economies around the world, why do you not want to give? Egypt is just asking the same thing today as it did back then. And Moses is saying, Lord, the reason you brought us out was not for our benefit, was to bring honor to yourself. Lord, the reason you brought us through these battles is not for our benefit. It's to bring honor to yourself. Lord, the reason you saved me as a young boy was not to benefit me. My life is supposed to bring honor to you. So when we complain, when we gripe, when we moan, when we groan, when we show lack of faith, when we show that what we believe in is not really that important, the rest of the world is saying, that's kind of what we thought in the first place. That's why we don't come. That's why we're not there. That's why I'm not giving up my life to do the things you're doing. I mean, let's be honest. When is the Masters Championship? What day of the week? It's on Sunday. When is the Super Bowl? It's on what day? Sunday. When is the NASCAR events? It's on Sunday. When is the other football championships and racing and the NFL and games and certain sports in general? What day of the week are they? They're on Sunday. Why do they have millions of people? Judy and I will drive back to our house on Sunday nights or Wednesday nights, and we'll drive by a place, it's called Wild Wings, I think it is. It's over on Emory, that new place. That place is packed. You couldn't get in there if you wanted to. And I'm thinking, we only had about 150 on Sunday night. Why is that place packed and the church isn't? Well, it's simple. It's because what we are telling the rest of the world is, you're right. It's not for everybody. We don't really believe it ourselves. We're doing it, and I've put my name on that church roll, and I've prayed that prayer, and down deep, my thought is, I'm doing it just in case it is real, just in case. I don't want to be the one caught left-handed whenever this thing happens. If the clouds do part, if he does come back, when I do die, if it all is real, at least I've covered that path, right? Many people do that. So, as Christians, we can identify with this report, right? It's just too hard to give up this to come on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday nights. It's too much of an obstacle to take that battle, because the minute I identify myself at work as a Christian, I'm not going to be the one invited to Hooters Monday when all the guys go, right? It's as a child, as a teenager, as a college student, as a young person, when I really stand up for Christ and I let everybody know I love Jesus Christ and I am a Christian, you're all of a sudden not going to be the popular one. You're probably going to be the one that's most talked about. Because everybody's going to do what? They're going to watch you. They're going to make sure you're living the life based upon what you're saying. Because if he's so good, then you should trust him. If he's so strong and so powerful, and if he can overcome these sons of Anak, if he can overcome the Amorites and the Amalekites and all of these people, and he can get us over the river and through the woods and over this battle and over this hurdle and break down the defense of all these big cities, then let's just trust him and go. But if he's not that strong, maybe we'll step back. I mean, he's been good so far. We'll go this far. But if I go further, then I'm really telling everybody that I trust him. I'm really saying that I put my health report in his hands. I'm really doing what the song said. I'm praying. I'm letting it go to his hands, and he knows what's best for me. Regardless of the outcome, he's got it, right? But we don't do that. And so today is no different than in that day. And when I read that this week, my whole world shook up. I was on a series of emotions. I cried, I prayed, I sought God in my private time, thinking, Lord, what is it in my life that I'm just like the nation of Israel? Where am I not trusting you? And the rest of the world is looking, saying, well, if he's so big, why don't you trust him, James? I had this done to me this week, and I want to close with this. And this is to show you how God's done all this. I got up, and I went over on the other side of the campus to work on something. And when I came back, on my desk was a piece of paper. And that piece of paper said, James, you don't know me, and I want it that way. but I see you every day at work, and I know that you go to church and you really believe in God. So would you please pray for my situation that He'll take care of it? Now that got me. It got me not because this person was hurting, but because for one brief moment, one just millisecond in my life, somebody saw me as somebody who really believes what I say I believe in. And if that's what we have to do to draw people into this building, if that's what we have to do to stop the murmuring and the gossiping and the rumoring for this world of Egypt saying, if He's really that good, then why don't you believe it? If that's what it takes, is for me to show the world that I believe what I believe, and I'm willing to put my faith and my trust in Him for everything of my life in an effort to touch one person, shouldn't it be worth it? Because here you have a whole nation on the verge of the promise given to their forefathers, ready to back out because they see obstacles too big than their God. And Moses is telling us, God, if you wiped them out, the whole world's going to say they were right. You ain't that big. You ain't that good. And that is how we should share the gospel in this world. Let everybody know I'm here for a reason, because I believe in Him. And I believe it so much that you're going to see me believe it. I'm going to trust Him. I'm going to walk close to Him. I'm going to believe what He says. And if He says it's time to move, I'm moving. If He says stay, I'm staying. If He says we can overcome this together, we're going through that battle and we're going to overcome it because He said He would. Numbers chapter 14, verse 17 and 18 is so relevant in our modern world because Egypt is looking at us saying, if it's that good, then why are y'all acting the way you're acting? If He's that strong, why are y'all acting the way you're acting? I didn't mean to get that much harsh today, but it's something that really just hit me like a brick this week. Because this world wants to know, is it real? And it's up to us to show them that it is. I pray for you. I pray for the service. I hope you're praying for the service, because today is a day visitors are coming in and they're going to want to know, is this really a good place to be? And it's up to us to show them it is. Good day. God bless.